I'm not the coach, because that's definitely the case. And so tonight's topic is one that's really dear to my heart. And it's the whole notion of youth development. And youth development is an attitude, it's a mindset. And that mindset really started to come about in the early 1990s. And as a result of that, we ended up with expanded learning programs. Prior to this whole approach of youth development, there were not expanded learning programs. There were extracurricular activities if you were in high school, maybe in junior high, but certainly not in elementary. And so youth development is a mindset that says this is what sets it apart. Young people are assets to be developed, not problems to be fixed. So instead of focusing on maybe they aren't reading as well as you'd like for them to, or they don't quite understand history as well as you'd like for them to, focusing on those deficits, let's focus on their assets. And if we do that, it will bring the other stuff along. So I just wanted to be clear that for me is such an important mindset, especially since expanded learning is an end result of that movement in the early 1990s. So I don't know, Brett, if you want to add anything to that about youth development, but I just wanted to set that stage so that we can answer questions.
No, I don't think I need to add anything.
Okay, so if we have people that are attending, you can send a message, and Robert, who is the MC that's behind the screen and you can't see him, will forward those to us or ask them of us, and then we will respond as in real time as close as we can. So thank you if you're here for coming. We really appreciate that. And we hope that this dialogue between Brett and I about youth development and its importance and how it works will be beneficial to you. So Robert, let's get started with the first question.
Okay, our first question is, what are the core principles of youth development?
So I will start with that one. There are seven core principles of youth development. And although you can start anywhere with any one of them, they actually do build upon one another, so that what you end up with is a young person who has agency, the ability to understand that they can make decisions that will impact their life. So the very first one is competence. You have to be able to do a few things. You have to be competent. You have to be able to perhaps manage impulsivity. You might need to be able to be competent in collaboration, but you need to have competency so that you can make sense of the real world around you. If you are competent, then what that's going to lead to is confidence. You will have more confidence in yourself, and you will believe in yourself because you're able to do certain things. This confidence then starts to grow and blossom. And what you realize is that you have control of you, not trying to control someone else, but controlling you. Maybe that is, again, how you build relationships, or how you interact with other people socially, or how you make decisions, but that you have a modicum of control about your life. And when that happens, you start to develop the next youth development principle, the ability to cope. And you develop coping mechanisms because you know that you are competent, you know that you have confidence, you know that you can make choices that are going to influence your life. So what you do is develop coping skills. Once you have those coping skills, then it leads to the development of your character, so that you start to understand the importance of being loyal, of being honest, of forthright, being trustworthy, all of those really core character pieces. And you have your own true north. You don't need somebody else to tell you that. You know what true north is to you, and that's how you behave, and that's how you make your decisions. Once that's established, then you are able to go out and make connections. And make connections not only with your friends and your peers, but connections to your community and beyond. You start to develop this notion that you don't have to just be a resource user. You can be a resource provider. You have something to offer the world, and your contribution is going to make a difference. And that's the final C of youth development principles. It's contribution, that you give back, that you make a difference for your family, for your community, for your friends, for people that you don't really know, for the world in general. And that then altogether comes all together to give you agency and this promise of yourself. And once you have that promise, you're able to thrive. So those are the core youth development principles as they are defined. And I like to call them the 7 C's plus an A, right? Which is the agency, and a T, which is to thrive.
Did she freeze up there?
Of
Yeah.
youth development.
You froze up on my screen, but I guess you're back.
Okay. All right. So what's the next question? Or unless Brett, you want to weigh in on that?
I'll just say ditto. But, for me, it's hard in the formal sense, the buzzwords of youth development, because for me, it was like that word goes so much deeper than the buzzwords that are out there. And to me, it's like that's our whole job, right? This is, and I'll probably say it 50 times tonight, but it's the practicing ground for the real world. And so you want to be able to develop the youth. And I like the framework that you put together there, or you at least talked about. But to me, it's just one of those things. It's like behavior guidance, right, or discipline. I'm like, I never had to discipline because I did behavior guide them, right, so to speak. So it's like youth development in the formal sense. It's one of those things I never got into per se, but I understand it. So I think you framed it nice.
I really liked what you said about preparing them for the real world, because you've got to navigate out there. And that's why you develop. That's why they are assets to be developed rather than problems to be fixed, for sure. 100%. Okay, Robert, is there another question?
Yes. Our next question would be, how can I tact youth to set and achieve personal goals? Teach.
So teaching them how to make professional goals. Brett, do you want to take a start at that?
Yeah, so it depends on the setting. So uh, Gma and I, or Dr. Cindy Zandis here, and I created a 120-hour course, and mainly she did that. But anyway, part of that course, we have a system which I actually did create, and we say that there's 5 categories. So this is a little bit tough in school, but the first one is spiritual sacred. And so if we're in school, we just replace that with mindset, even though we have another system for that. And so we would ask them, hey, what are the personal goals, or what are you wanting to achieve in that area? And who knows what they're going to say? I want to get closer to God. I want to Bible study. I want to whatever. And so sometimes we have to help them to frame that, because some of that's the activity and it's not necessarily a goal. So we say, well, what's the goal in that? And so, they say, oh, we want to get to heaven, whatever the case may be. Or maybe their mindset is they want a new Ferrari, or whatever the case, a Lamborghini and whatnot. And then the second part is what we call family and friends. And what's the goal there that you're trying to ultimately get to? And so they can say whatever. And we talk to them about what we call constant contact, right? And so obviously with your immediate family, you're going to have a lot more exposure with them because you're probably living in the same house with them. But I know I don't live in the same house with my mom, but we talk every day. We alternate, days. Every Sunday we alternate the weekends and we have dinner and whatnot. So how are you going to do that, or what's the goal? Well, the goal is that we want to see each other, and the goal is to develop that familiar type atmosphere or closer bond or whatever. And then the next one we say is habitual health. We kind of break that down into 3s, like we do a lot of our system stuff. It seems like it's easier to remember, and so we break that down: mental, emotional, and then physical health. So it's real easy for me to say, oh, my goal is to lose 5 pounds in such and such a time. And then the next one, we call it particularly personal, And that could be what's your goal? I want to read 4 books because that's what I like doing, or I want to watch 7 movies, or I'm going to binge watch, The Dragon's Lair, or whatever it is that you're going to be able to do. And then the final one is around what we call candid career, which would be like material goals or maybe financial goals, or so it could be a house or how much money you want to make or different things of that nature. And so what we do is we modify that for youth depending on their age. So the older they are, we can just give it to them carte blanche and say, here you go, and go for it. The younger they are, then we may want to be able to narrow that down and explain one thing about mindset to them, so to speak. So to me, when I'm teaching them, I want to give them that similar framework and structure, just like the doctor did overall with youth development. We want to be able to say, here are the parameters, and then it gives them something really easy to plug into.
I agree with that. And the other thing I think that's important is to understand that a goal is something that you plan to work toward. If you say my goal is to eat a cookie, well, you can do that, and that's not a trick at all, right? You can just do that and yet people will think that's a goal. A goal is something that you plan to work toward, and that you want to maybe 1 year, 3 years down the road that you hope to achieve. And I think that it starts by setting small goals that you can achieve maybe within a month in the beginning. And then you start to stretch that time out, because let's say that they decide that they want a career as a plumber. They're going to have to go to school. They're going to have to be an apprentice. It's going to take them a while to develop those skills, and then they'll be a journeyman, and then they can be a plumber. Or if they want to be a teacher, you have to go through this process. It's delayed gratification. And that goal is the end that you want. But if you never set little goals and then start stretching those and stretching them again, it's very difficult to wait 4 years to get what you want. And so I think it's important to help young people say, if in 1 month I want to be able to do this, and maybe for the littles, the really littles, it's by the end of the week I want to do this. And yet it's not immediate. It's slightly delayed, and then the delay gets longer. I also think that you can give kids kind of a frame for setting goals. And that frame would be in this amount of time, or at this point in time, I want to be able to, and then they can identify that. So I think that setting goals is hugely important, because Alice in Wonderland, there is a quote from there that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. And that's why you set goals, because you want to get on the right road to get you to where you want to be. And I think it's a process that happens over time. And you have to start when they're little, so that by the time they're old enough to make really impactful goals in their life, they're ready.
Yeah, not to belabor the point, but just 2 other things that came to mind as you were talking. So we have a system that we call APR, which is not your annual percentage rate, but we say activities and then the progressions and the result. So the result is the goal that you want, and then the activities are what you're trying to do to ultimately to be able to achieve that. And then the progressions would be like benchmarks. The other way that I do that is I call it the Bayou Blueprint. And so we say SP, which is the starting point, and then you have the ER, which is the end result, and then you have the blueprint underneath and the benchmarks to get there. And so as an example, weight loss, let's say your starting point is 240. That's not me, that's somebody else that's 240 pounds, right? And then let's say that you want the end result to be 200, and you want to do that over a period of time of 4 months, then your benchmarks would be 230, 220, 210, then to get to 200. And then what's the blueprint, which would be the activity, so to speak. And then you're saying, oh, I'm going to sleep 8 hours instead of 7. I'm going to drink an extra 40 ounces of water. I'm going to lower my caloric intake. I'm going to run. I'm going to do all these things. And so that's another way that we break it down with kids, is either the APR or that Bayou blueprint as well.
Absolutely. It gives them a framework. All right. Something else, Robert?
Yes, our third question would be how can I promote resilience in youth facing challenges?
Ooh, resilience is definitely a habit of mind. They just completed a study, and the news from the study was not good. It said that young people in the United States give up more easily, more quickly than young people from anywhere else in the world. So the second it gets hard, they want to quit. And so, one of the things that I think we do in youth development is this. Uh, I want you to think about different children that you've known. There are some children who just learn easy, right? They were easy to read, they were easy to write, they're easy to do math. School stuff is just easy. And so they get in the habit of that life is going to be easy. And that's not true. Life is not easy. Now, there may be parts of it that are easy because it fits you, but when we have young people who have the easy button all along and we don't challenge them to go beyond that easy button, they do not develop resiliency. And so the second it gets tough, they go, well, I didn't really want that anyway. I'm not doing that. They back off. So I think that rigor is something that you need to understand. In expanded learning, we say that there are 3 R's. You have to build relationships. What you do has to be relevant to you, not to somebody else, relevant to you and meaningful. And it has to have some rigor. It needs to be hard enough so that you are pushing forward, that you don't just get it automatically. But it also has to be easy enough that if you do your part, if you work, if you try, if you keep growing, you will be able to accomplish it. And sometimes I think we tend to do, 37th place trophies. That teaches young people a bad message. There are lots of things you do in life that you don't get a trophy for. There are lots of things that you can do in life that nobody's even going to acknowledge that what it was important. So we have to develop resilience, and we do that by stretching kids and teaching them that fail is not a bad word. Fail is your first attempt in learning, and it's okay. If you fail, great. Now what will you do about it? Not quit, but pick up and move forward. So Brett, I'll push that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the stuff that you were saying. I'll just give a couple things that I was thinking about. So one was when we were doing our first year, however many 20 years ago or so of after school programming, we did employee of the month, but we also did employees. So that if you reach a certain standard, because we believe in a merit-based, system, right? So if you reach a certain standard of things that whatever the criteria was at the time, I forget, it was 20 something years ago, but whatever that was, then you could be an employees plural of the month. But then we also wanted to reward the best person for that month or for that week or whatever as well. And I think that when you talk about resilience, then you still are striving to be, you may not be the best, right? Talent matters, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't be the best that version of yourself. And that may be more than enough to get into that big bucket of employees. The other thing is I like to partner kids up, like a workout buddy, right? So I get up in the morning, it's 5 o'clock. If I'm by myself, I may or may not go to the gym. But if I have a workout buddy, I'm like, oh, I have to. So in other words, I can't quit. Meaning in this case, I have to start. So, right, part of being resilient means you have to start. So to have a buddy that says, no, we're going to do this together. We're going to run together. We're going to jog together. We're going to do this. Or when they quit, they say, no, one more. So I like that, the workout buddy. The other thing is that I mean, I'm about as results oriented as you could possibly be on this earth. I mean, I'm a results oriented, focused, crazy man when it comes to that. But I also like the journey to be able to get there and watch other people at the journey. And I love when they fall down because the thing is, you get to get right back up. Or in a spiritual religious sense, sometimes God's got to knock you all the way on your backside, so the only thing you can do is look up, so to speak, and then you got to be resilient and get back on the horse. So I think that a lot of those things you said really hit well with me. But those are just some additional stories and whatnot that may be helpful for people.
Absolutely. Thank you. Robert,
Uh,
next question.
yes, before I continue, I want to let you guys know we have 3 viewers on YouTube and 2 on Twitch.
Yay. Hello. Glad you're here. And if they want to write in a question, how should they do that, Robert?
They would just for YouTube, they would just have to write it in the comment, and for Twitch as well, they just have to write it in the comment.
Cool.
Okay. So we'll be looking forward to that.
Are
Awesome.
you,
So
are you gonna
welcome.
are you gonna shout them out, Robert? Like, hey, frying pan 492.
I'm not able to see the name on the YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well,
All
we'll just
right.
name all five of them Frying Pan 492 then. Hi, guys.
All right. And welcome. Glad you're here.
All right. Our next question will be: what strategies encourage self-confidence in youth?
You want to start that one, Brett, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so we have a thing we call World's Wonder. And what we mean by that is what can you be the best in the world at? Well, you don't know when you're young, right? There's things that you may know about yourself. I was a pretty good athlete, but I was real small. I mean, I was tiny. I was 4'11", weighed 96 pounds my freshman year in high school. So even if I was highly athletic, which I was super fast. I could jump out of the gym. I was very strong for my size. I could wrestle people that were 80 pounds heavier than me, and I could pretzel them up, and so on and so forth. But in the end, I knew those things, and I love sports, and that was the way that I kind of navigated the world. Okay, well, great. I knew that at an early age. A lot of people don't know that. So then what you would do is you would give them a variety of different areas and see what not only they're great at or world's wonder, but what do they like, right? Because if you put purpose and passion along with your talent level and what you're motivated to do, and you have some desire there, you start putting these things together in a smoothie, and you're going to have something that's going to be amazing. But the best story we have on that, which we talked about like 5 weeks ago, hopefully I'm not stealing it from you, Gma, is this gal. So we we went and watched. We got extremely lucky. We had this guy who had a falling out of some sort. I think his mom was sick or something, but he was like a big wig down in L.A. and he taught all these dancers that were for videography and stuff like that with J Lo and all these types of people. Well, we got him for a semester. And so we went and watched his production in middle school. And my mom and I both could not take our eyes off of this one gal, this eighth grade gal. She was the most amazing dancer I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen some amazing professional dancers. And we were just mesmerized. And at the end, the guy introduced us to this eighth grade girl. And she said, and I'm not a teary eyed kind of guy. And I still get tears in my eyes. She said, I didn't know I was a dancer. And I was like, wow, thank you, Jesus, for allowing that guy to come to let her know. And she went on to do professional dancing and made a living out of it. So when we talk about this is the practicing ground for the real world, there you go, people. We had other people that we did where we would have them interview with us. And I think, Mom, you probably remember the fifth grade girl comes in. She's dressed to the nines. We give her questions. She's like, I don't need your questions. And she started just boom, 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 boom. We were like, whoa. And she wound up being HR of a Fortune 500 company. So if we don't give these people opportunities to succeed and or flop, and going back to the resilience part of it, then how would we really know? So we want to give a wide variety of ways that they can look at it. They have aptitude tests. We do a spiritual gifts assessment. We do the simple one that we can do with kids in like 3 minutes, where they draw a picture of themselves and we could talk about their strengths and whatnot. We have this E&O thing that we do with them, which is like an aptitude test, to where we see, are they more on the task end of things or the people end of things. So there's so many different ways to be able to introduce these things to youth. And then what you want to do is help them to foster that and blossom with that. And if you have a leader, let them lead, right? If you have somebody that's the data file clerk, let them file data, right? Or whatever, and everywhere in between, so to speak. Last thing I'll say on that is this: when I had my special day kids, one of the things they could do that was just amazing is clean. So I told them, hey, the front of this classroom and the front of the, in the corridor, that sucker better be clean. And a lot of those kids wound up being janitors or different things of that nature because I gave them the chance and found out what they were good at from the very jump.
Absolutely. I think that's so true. So I guess I want to say this: the most underutilized resource in any school-related program is the students. We do not give them an opportunity to shine. So I will share this story. When I was a principal, I wanted the library to be updated so that we could have scan codes to check them out, because at that time you had to take a card. And my librarian told me, oh, well, I'll have to close the library for 5 months. I'll have to work extra hours. It will take forever. And I don't know if I can get it done then. And I thought, well, I'm not closing the library for 5 months, not doing that. Kids need to be at the library. So I pulled together 12 sixth grade kids. I taught them exactly how to do it. And in 2 weeks, they had it done. And it was done perfectly. They were more than capable of doing that. But what we tend to do is decide that, oh, well, I don't think they'd be able to do that. They probably wouldn't want to. And I think that we just need to give them opportunities. So they are the underutilized resource that you have, number one. Number two, what I like to think about when I'm thinking about school or expanded learning is a 200,000 square foot warehouse. And in that warehouse, every 6 feet, there's a door. And your job is to open all those doors that you possibly can for them. And if they walk in and they are there, and let's say that you say if you choose that, you're going to be there for 4 weeks because we think that'll give you a good taste of it. And they say at the end of 4 weeks, yuck, I never want to do that again. That's as important as going, I really kind of like that. So we're giving them opportunities, and the more opportunities you have, and that you can learn to say, yes, that's me, I like that, or no, that's not me, I don't like that, that wasn't comfortable, then you are helping them develop confidence to make choices that will suit them and will help them progress toward their goals. So I just think it's always about choices and recognizing that they're amazing. And just one more quick story. I have a granddaughter who just turned 9, and I will tell you, there is nobody better at dusting blinds than she is. And she takes great pride in seeing to it that I have no dust on my blinds. And I will tell you, if it were up to me to dust them, I don't care how dusty they get. But she is committed to doing that, and she does a brilliant job. So I just think we need to give kids those opportunities to build confidence by doing, and stop teaching them to be helpless. So another question, Robert.
Yes, before we continue, I just want to put out there that we do have our ETL team. So if you guys want to welcome them in.
Hello, ETL team. Is it the group from Arvin and the group from Shafter both?
I believe it's a group from, yes, Arvin and Shafter.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. We hope that this will be like professional development for you to really get to have a deep understanding of youth development, which it should be top of mind and core for us in the expanded learning. So welcome. Glad you're here.
Awesome. So our next question will be, how can I foster leadership skills in youth programs?
So I'm sure you don't want us to just say, well, let them lead, right? But in a nutshell, you got to give them opportunities to lead because that's the only way we'll develop them. So Brett, I'm going to let you answer that more, but give them the chance.
Lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? Isn't that what they say?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I look at it and say, depending on how young they are, but I mean, obviously what you said is the best, right? Just let them try it and see how well they do, and you can just coach them up. But I think that, depending on their age and whatnot, is they have to be able to lead themselves first, right? And people say, well, what does that look like? Well, everything that we would want to know, right? Or, are they getting in line correctly? Are they getting their homework done? Are they, looking out for others? Are they doing all of those types of things? And one of the things that we do pretty well, with Entrusted Legacy or through Consult for Kids is we have a great leadership program. And one of the things that we say is we start with this accountability formula, right? So you have to be accountable to yourself first. So what I say is, as the CEO of Consult for Kids, that everything that is right with somebody else and everything that's wrong, I still have to look in the mirror. Now I may trash talk a little bit, Robert and my mom, but in the end, it still goes back to me because I am the ultimate leader, and so that's what has to happen. Just like Dr. Gma here, she's the ultimate leader of Entrusted Legacy. She has to look in the mirror if things are able to go wrong. But what we want to do is start with them at a very young age. And how do we do that? Same thing we were talking about earlier. Start them as classroom monitors, right? You're the ball monitor, you're the pencil person, you're so on and so forth. And then just coach them up and talk to them about being accountable and to themselves, but also, and more importantly, be accountable to that team. I'm watching a thing on Netflix right now. It's 22 episodes per season, and there's like 7 seasons, and it's called SEAL Team. And man, you want to talk about being accountable as a leader and also to your team. Watch an episode or two of that, because that's the ultimate accountability. Because if you're not there and everybody's accountable, then there's some really negative things that can happen. So I'll pass that back to you.
All right. And first of all, I 100% agree that you have to lead yourself first. And then you can become part of you can become a part of a team and be a contributing team member. And in some situations, you'll lead. In others, you'll be a great follower. And that's good too, right? That's leading maybe from the back instead of the front. And when you were talking about student jobs, one of the things that I love when I go and visit a program is to have a greeter come up to me when I walk into a classroom and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, stick their hand out and shake my hand and say, I'm so-and-so, and this is what we're doing. And then I can introduce myself to them. But they're able to do that. And so it can start in the classroom, but then even better than that is that you get a student guide to take you through the program. And I will share this story, and it happened. I was in Los Angeles visiting a program, and this has been years ago. And I was blown away. It was an amazing middle school program. I mean, amazing. And I thought, wow, these kids are so lucky. And so we were walking outdoors, and my 2 guides were taking me outdoors to see something that they did in a collaborative way outdoors. And I said to them, you guys are so lucky. This is great. I said, this is just amazing. And they looked at me and they said, oh, we're only doing this today because you're here. And I thought, oh, sad day, right? So here were these kids totally capable of doing amazing things, leading activities, and nobody let them do it except to impress me? No, you do that not to impress me, but to help them build those skills. So when I get a guide, or I get somebody who greets me, or I get a kid who you can talk with and they share things, it's not about it for me. It's that they're developing the skills they need to lead and to move forward. And some kids are so capable. Just get out of the way. And I also encourage people to develop a street team. A street team would be a group of maybe 8 to 10 kids, and you have them actually do real work. So a lot of times in program, you are short staffed, and that's a problem. But if you have a street team who can come in and assist, not that they don't have to have an adult there to watch, but they can lead activities. They can lead an art activity. They can lead an outdoor activity. They can support in homework. And what you've done is you've reduced your ratio of kids to adults, and you will discover that the kids are going to listen to the other kids far more than they listen to you at any rate. So again, back to this underutilized resource, but you have to give them opportunities. And some kids will just want to be good followers, and that's okay. And other kids will want to be the questioners that say, well, what about this? Could we? And right, not really lead, but ask a lot of questions. And that's great too. All of those people come to pull a team together and then can move forward in a leadership way. So back to the simple answer, let them do it. So do we have another question, Robert?
Yes, we do. Our next question will be, how can I teach youth to balance independence with seeking help?
So I have to say that question has one of my least favorite words in it, and that is balance. I don't think that balance implies to me that it has to be equal, right? If you need help, that's going to play louder than not needing help. And kids need to know that if you really need help, that you need to be able to ask for that help in a certain way. You need to be able to say, this is the problem I'm having. This is what I understand. And this is what I need help with. And that way, that's very helpful as an adult, because maybe what you're going to do is pair them up with a buddy, right? Or maybe you will ask questions that will help them discover their own answers. But I think that balance isn't the word for me. So I want you to be interdependent. I want you to be collaborative. And sometimes that's going to play louder. And sometimes, just like in an orchestra, that's going to play softer. But it's going to be in harmony. And what you're going to do is really provide for each young person the opportunity to grow by playing some piece louder than others at that moment, because they've made a choice that that's what's best for them. So now I'll kick that to you, Brett.
Well, I think it kind of goes back for me to holistic instruction, right? So let's state the objective, right? We're gonna, blow bubbles with Coca-Cola or whatever it is, and everybody's gonna like, I've never done that before. Okay, because we're gonna find out about their prior knowledge, right? I've never done that before, so I don't know what to do. And I always tell them, like, I go back to my coaching days. Let's say it was the shot or the disc. I wanted to see what they could do first. So I say, always, you're just gonna try it. Whatever you think that objective is that I just stated, whatever you think that you should be doing, let's just try it. And then let's see what happens. And then we can go from there. And so let's say that we're going to talk about, baseball, swinging a baseball bat. Okay, well, if you're right-handed, right, your left hand should be on the bottom, your right hand on top. Well, they would go like this sometimes and switch it up. Who cares? You tried it the best way that you could. Now I can go in there and I can teach them to do stuff. So to me, I don't like the word balance either, as you well know. And we don't need to balance this out. Just go try it. Try everything. I used to tell them in the disc, just start spinning around, and eventually they're going to fall down, because I know they're going to fall down in the ring. And I go, is anybody laughing? No, nobody's laughing at them. Okay, like professional athletes fall down. it's okay. Going back to the resilience question earlier. So I think that you just always have to try. And there's certain things that are going to be a slam dunk that, are going to be easy for them to do. There's other things where it's 50-50. That's where you can get into trouble, that maybe you go in and you start enabling versus helping and supporting. We don't want to enable anybody. Let them stretch a little bit, right? We go in there and rescue all the time. Let them fall down a little bit. When my personal kids used to go up the tree, hey, they had a 50-50 chance whether they would fall out of it. And sometimes they did. But natural consequence is always the best. And so to me, it's like, go ahead and try those things. And then there's the things where they're just looking at you, as my mom says, you got 14 heads. You then might want to be able to interact and say, okay, do this first, do this second, do this third, 1.1, 1.2, so on and so forth. But in the end, balance, just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You're going to fall down. Big deal. Get back up. It's not that big of a deal.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And I think too often, well, I think we help kids be afraid of failure. Have you ever talked to a kid and they've gotten a D or an F on a test and they're just beside themselves and they say, "Oh, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I blah 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 blah." And then when you ask them, "What does that D or F really mean?" And they go, "It means all of that." And you go, "No, it means that you got an F on the test." Right? What can you do about that? Well, maybe you need to spend more time studying. Okay. Is that something you could do? It has nothing to do with that you are so horrible that you can't move forward in something. And I think that that's not only is that resilience, right? That's leading yourself and not giving up. Now, you may get to a point. So, for instance, at one point in my life, I thought that since I could play the piano, I could play the flute. That's not true. They are not the same thing. But I did stick with the flute long enough to know that I wasn't willing to invest the time I would need to invest to be good at it. And I was okay with that. I tried it. I ran it around the block for about 6 months and I decided, you know what? No, I don't want to make that investment of myself. And I think that's okay if kids do that, but they have to try it. They have to get up, they have to do it, and then they can say, not for me.
Also, before we move on to the next question, I used to tell them who versus what, right? And I would say, is this what you did or who you are? Right? Getting an F is what you did. That doesn't mean that's who you are. So all the stuff you were listing off, that litany of I'm no good, I'm this, I'm rotten, I'm stupid, I'm done. No, you're not any of those things. You flunked the test. And so then the question is, which also you said, did you study? Did you study correctly? Did you study long enough? Did you, right? And then you work that through, so to speak. But the who versus the what, whether that's in youth or adults, is a big deal. Because a lot of times I know that, when we've given some constructive criticism, man, they'll fall in the tank. And it's like, no, it's not that big of a deal. This is what you did. And we're saying consider to do it differently for the future so that you might be able to potentially get a better result.
I think that's an important lesson, especially from a youth development lens. If you're an asset to be developed, then you have got to know the difference between who you are and what you did. Because the way we learn is by what we did, whether it worked or didn't work, right? That's the landscape we live in. Okay, Robert, you're up.
Okay, our next question would be, what role does mentoring play in supporting youth development?
You want to take a crack at that first, or do you want me to?
I'll go. That's fine. It'd be nice if we got some questions from ETL. Did they know? I don't know if they know how to do that. Robert, can you tell them how to ask, depending on what platform they're on?
Yeah, I left them a comment on the YouTube, but they are in there.
Okay.
Okay.
They're gun shy, I guess, right? So to me, it's like the old adage of be a walking sermon versus a talking sermon, right? And so if you think about kids, period, I was able to watch my mom walk her talk, right? Her work ethic was amazing. So I have amazing work ethic. Her, intellectual abilities were amazing. I'm not that intellectual, but I try hard, right? So that what she showed us was far more powerful than what she told us, right? So that walking sermon versus a talking sermon, and to me, this is everything, right? This is our life, man. As a child champion, your life is to mentor these kids, right? Not to do stuff for them when they can do it on their own, not to enable, but to empower, and to do that, that walking sermon, right? I worked hard because I wanted the people around me to work hard. I wanted results because I felt like, hey, you know what? I either am going to teach that kid 1+1 = 2, or I'm not. So to me, the people business is very gray, but I like to make it as black and white as possible because there is so much gray in the people business. So to me, it's everything, being a solid mentor in not just what you say, but more importantly, how you act, how you walk, the things that you do, the things that they see you do versus what their ears are hearing you say that you should do.
Absolutely. I often think about the word respect when it comes to that, right? So we talk about being respectful and that we'll be polite and we'll disagree with kindness and blah, blah, blah. And then as an adult, you've got a million things going on when you're working with kids, and you'll have a kid who is disrespectful. And they aren't just disrespectful quietly, they're disrespectful loudly, and they're disrespectful probably more than once. And so what we do is we go womp at them. And what you do when you do that is say to them in their mind, I don't have to be respectful. They say that, but they aren't practicing it themselves. And that's why I think it's so important to sometimes what you'd like to say isn't going to come out of your mouth. You're going to bite your tongue and you can say it somewhere else. But what you have to present to young people is a person who's willing to listen, and if you want to disagree with them, by all means disagree. But you have to do it in a respectful way, or you give them permission to be disrespectful because you were. And so the most disrespectful kid you have needs you to be the most respectful that you can possibly be as their mentor, and to be able to say to them, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree. I understand what you're saying, but I can't support that decision. I understand, but I'm going to stay true to myself, but I'm not going to be angry with you or upset, even though maybe inside you're in turmoil, and I get that. But I think it's important that we model the behaviors that we want. I will share this story. We had a gal that I was working with when I was in Orange County working with Think Together, and she was an eye roller. She rolled her eyes all the time. Every time anybody said something that wasn't exactly in line with what she thought, she'd roll her eyes. And so it was brought up in a group setting that she rolled her eyes. She said, I don't do that. I don't do that, as she's rolling her eyes. And they said, you're doing it right now. And she had done that so often that the kids were rolling their eyes, and she was upset because they were rolling their eyes at her and being disrespectful. And yet she was modeling that behavior constantly. And it was a real eye-opener to her when her peers said to her, they do that because that's what you do. And so you're pretty powerful when you work with kids, especially if the older you are, the less kids relate to you. I mean, like I would be grandma to them. But if you're young, they want to be you. They can see themselves being 20. They can see themselves being 24. And so they want to be like you, and they will imitate you. That's why being a positive role model and mentor is so important.
Yeah, I want to just add one other thing, and it looks like we have a question from Giselle Mendoza that I want to get to next. But the other thing is that, your style is your style. So my style as a mentor is more straightforward and result oriented and so on and so forth. And somebody else's may be a lot more patient and different things of that nature. And so, my wife, she would tell the kids 4 times. I would just look at them and they knew I was serious. So whatever your style is on mentoring, be okay with it, right? Not everybody has to be like, oh, what do you do, doll, whatever. You can be more on the serious side, but you need to be able to go all directions, right? To be able to reach a whole different set of kids. But I remember when my kids would come home from like seventh or eighth grade, my personal kids, and they would be like, oh, well, that teacher was a jerk in first period. I didn't like them. I said, good. They said, what do you mean good? And I said, well, do you think you're going to meet jerky people in your life? And they go, yeah. And I go, good. Now you're going to know how to deal with them. So, let's not penalize yourself for the style that you have in mentoring. The key is that you're getting them to move along to be able to ultimately get that end result, or at least progress, so to speak. So, do we want to go into this question, Robert?
I
Yes.
would.
You want to read
Okay.
it to us? We can't read.
Oh, yes, of course. So Giselle Mendoza asks, what are some ways we can encourage older students to explore further into subject like science?
So, hello, Giselle. Glad that's a great question. I think that if you're doing that, development. When you talk about development, that's a time. It happens over time, right? And I think sometimes when we do science with kids, we are so excited about the activity that we do one and dones. That's what I would call it. We do one lesson on it and that's it. And then we'll wait and we'll do another lesson later. So I think that sometimes a lesson needs to be extended long enough. And so let's say, and I'm not saying this is a lesson you want to do, but let's say that the science lesson is about physical science. And what I want you to understand is about forces in motion. And what I want you to understand is that the slope of a ramp will alter the speed of a toy car. Let's say that that's what I'd like for you to learn. So what I can do is what I would call an iterative process, which will engage youth in going deeper. So the very first assignment would be to create here's materials that are available. Choose the ones that you want. And what I want you to do, the objective, the clear expectation is that you will make a ramp and you'll be able to adjust the slope of that ramp and determine how far the car will go and if it makes a difference. Okay, so we do that. Now I'm going to add, for the next iteration of that, I'm going to say, what I want you to do is work with the ramp, but I want you to create a tunnel on that ramp. And I want to see if that tunnel makes any difference in the speed, or is it really the slope? Then I might do a third iteration that would say, okay, let's see if the car will go faster if the ramp is slick compared to a ramp that is of sandpaper. So did the texture make a difference? So I hope that makes sense. So if you do a lesson and you do it in an iterative way, so they keep adding, what you will do is help them to go deeper rather than just have them build a ramp one time, test it 3 times and see what the results are and report on it. So I think that whether it's physical science or life science or earth and space science, or in California, also environmental science, which are the 4 areas that they want us to cover. I think that iterative projects help kids go different. Here's your first result, now add to it, here's your second, add to it again, here's your third. And each time you're building out that project so that it is, they're developing their capacity to continue to problem solve, because you keep throwing in a new challenge, a new thing that they're going to have to deal with, a new variable that they have to deal with by adding them one on top of the other. And so I don't know if you do that already, but that would be my suggestion of a way to help develop young people so that they're more curious, and then ask them to put their own challenge into effect after you put in 3 or 4.
Yeah, so first of all, I love the name Giselle. I worked with Giselle, that was a program manager at Fontana, and I liked her a lot, and I like the name. But anyway, thank you for the question. So look, where I would start is I would ask them about that. So I always say state the objective. So hey, I'd like to do a really fun and exciting, science project with you guys. And at this time of the year, depending on how long you've been with them, you probably already know, but I would never assume it. So I would state the objective, and then I would say, let's brainstorm that out. So ultimately, what would happen is, so let's say that you have like of the 20 kids you have in class, 10 or 15 of them are sports minded, right? And so now I have to take this lesson, this iterative process that my mom's talking about, and I've got to say, how do I turn this into 3 or 4 lessons that have to do with sports, right? And so, and then from there, I'm going to say, I'm going to go ask ChatGPT, hey, do a lesson plan for me. Just kidding, I didn't say that. But then what's going to happen is that you're going to talk with them and get an understanding of what they want, and then you're going to go be creative to create that lesson plan, and then you're going to give them the lesson plan, and then you're going to ask them, hey, how was that for you? And then they're going to say, either they liked it, it was somewhere in the middle, or maybe it wasn't great. Great, then you can iterate on the lesson plan as well. But eventually, if you think about it, let's say you were talking about, I don't know, I'm just throwing something out, but, leverage. How do you get leverage when you're shooting a jump shot, if that's what you guys were in basketball season or whatever? Well, maybe I can get some leverage from using my legs and having it go up through my arms, and the at the end, I'm going to put the hand in the cookie jar or whatever that is. And then ask them, just straight up ask them, hey, what did you like? What did you dislike? What are you undecided about? And then you can make those changes from there. So I like to ask them and get them involved in it. You can even, on lesson number 3 of the iterative process, have the best student in there, or one of the students, have them do their own lesson on it, and just continue to get them engaged over and over and over again.
That's great. I think we have one more question. Is that right, Robert?
Yes, we do. I really like this question. It was by Lupe. He asked, "What should one do when a student refuses to even interact with you when you're trying to figure out what's on the mind? What's on the mind of the child?"
So I'll take that first, Gma, if you don't mind. So I'll
I
talk to
don't
you
mind.
about 35 years ago. I don't know, a long time ago. It was my first teaching job, and I was able to read the folders on all these kids, and so I knew this kid had a major problem, which I'll get to in a minute. And I mean, this guy, special day kid, he had his hood over his head. He didn't even want to be part of the classroom, let alone the world, so to speak. And so all I did was I went up and I just kind of like would touch him on his back. And that's all I did for 5 days in a row. And then I went and I whispered something in his ear. And then and then the other kids were ragging on him, because let's say it was during math. And so they were like, why isn't he doing math? I said, hey, you guys keep to yourself. And so this is what happened. This is no joke. This is graphic and terrible, but I'll tell you what happened. His grandpa, who lived with him, and he was the oldest, this kid that was in my class of 7, gets them all lined up in the living room, puts a shotgun in his mouth, and pulls the trigger. Now, I know this. Now, the kids around don't know that. So I'm thinking to myself, does he really care about doing math? No, not at first. But I also knew in his jacket, so to speak, his folder, that he was good at math. So I just started by touching him, and then I started by just whispering something in his ear, something positive. Then it was encouraging. Then it was just putting one problem in front of him and letting him do nothing with it. But then eventually it was putting that problem in front of him in a pencil. And then it was putting that problem in a pencil with him and asking him. And because I did all the work in relationship building all the way through, this guy wound up being the best by far, not just in that class and in that year, but the best math kid that I ever had in special day. So I think that we have to be able to meet them where they're at. if you think about the greatest teacher of all time, I'll call him Jesus. You can, put your modus operandi is in there. I'm not here to preach at anybody. What did he do? He didn't sit back in the temple and go, yeah, come on, Peter, come on. No, he went and met them where they were at. They were fishermen. He went down to the lake and met them where they're at. So meet them where they're at, go slow to go fast, and ultimately you'll get that desired result that you want.
Yeah, and we never know why. It's hard to know why a kid does what they do, right? But I believe that kids make choices because they've learned to make those choices, right? For whatever they've experienced. And so sometimes kids just need an opportunity to sit and grow. And engagement is a continuum. So the fact that the child is still showing up is step one. They show up. The second, and they might be disruptive here, but they're there. The second step in that engagement continuum is to be present. And if I'm present, I'm not going to cause you grief. I may not really do much, but I'm not going to cause you grief. The third step is to be engaged. And being engaged means I'm doing what you ask of me. The next step is initiative. Not only am I going to do what you ask of me, I'm going to offer up something that I wonder about or that I think. And then the final step is ownership. And if you have a child and they own it, they're going to do it because they've bought into it. If you have a kid who's at showing up, which means they're there, but that's it. And I know, Lupe, you work with middle schoolers, so they could vote with their feet. So there's something about being with you that's better than where else they could be, or they would be somewhere else, right? So they're there and they're showing up. So great. Now let's see if we can get them to be present so they can just not disrupt. And then can we get them to the point that they will engage and do at least part of what we ask? But it's hard because middle schoolers have somewhere between 11, 12, 13, and 14 years of lived experience that has taught them to behave the way they do. And so listening and having compassion for them and showing them a little grace, I think is important. And sometimes I know for me, the very best thing you can do is just let me sit because that's what I can handle. So Robert, do we have any other questions? Or I think it's almost time for us to go. We've kept these people already too long, right?
Right. It's time.
It's time. So yay and thank you. Woohoo! And to those of you who are here, and I'd love to get an email from you giving feedback. And that feedback needs to be straightforward. Yes, maybe, no, and please do more of this, or this would be what we'd like to have had. So thank you for coming. Thank you for learning about youth development and the importance of looking at those young people as assets to be developed, not problems to be fixed. Thanks, and have a good rest of your evening.